Fantastic. Everybody, welcome to the PYRESWAP show. I don't know if you guys noticed, do you see we have new badges? The PYRESWAP show, sponsored by Pocket. And you can see down here a little PYRESWAP.com and even our little PYRESWAP at X logo. And it has a bit of a tint, and you know, we put that tint on there because otherwise we use so much whiteboard in this production. I don't think that the would have really brought the letters out. It would have really done them justice. But yeah, do you guys, thank you, Trigger Happy. Yes, I think the banners look great. And the one down here, the PYRESWAP.com and PYRESWAP.x, I think we're going to leave that on the screen. It possibly needs to be lengthened because I think the resolution I made it in is not the same as the output. How does it look on your guys' screen? Do you guys see it here like at a roughly 2/3 of the screen? Damn, this is weird to do it backwards. Okay, do you guys see it as 2/3 of the screen or as like the whole screen? There's a difference, goes halfway is 2/3, 5/8. Thank you. Okay, look at that, full length. Do you guys think it too big, too small? Let me get a little feedback here. 5/8, yeah, Seabiscuit really had that fucking calipered in. Yeah, there you go, not bad, not bad. And yeah, perfect. Okay, that was an adjustment done live, and I just want to make sure that it's not really bothering anybody. After seeing it here, though, I think what I'll do is I'll actually make it smaller, like I'll make a smaller version of it, maybe just half the height, and what that will do is that'll spread things out towards the end. So I'm just gonna remember that. Yeah, so I think here it does look okay, and we'll do it here today, but I think tomorrow or sometime later this week, I'll make another one that's maybe just, again, half the height of this, a little bit smaller. But again, for those of you who don't know, we're gonna be repurposing a lot of this content. Since we're gonna repurpose it, naturally we should have these fucking watermarks on the video. Would you guys agree? Having watermarks there, at least for the Twitter and the QR code. Would you guys agree that's the right course of action? Yes? Everybody in agreement? Bullish on watermarks. Yeah, I think watermarks are a big deal. Watermarks are where it's at. TikTok. Shout out to Winter Horse again for making TikTok number 2. TikTok. I don't know if you guys know much about the history of TikTok, but TikTok moved their watermark from the bottom right corner to like to the top right. I think somewhere it would be over here on their portrait mode short form, and that blew up their marketing because like they put it like literally blatantly in the left, like an obvious obnoxious place to put a watermark, but putting it there made it near impossible for it to get cropped off, if that makes sense. And like them just deciding that move was, I think, I was reading somebody's writing about it, and they described it as like the most genius branding move, that it was like a faux pas. Like you would never do a watermark so blatantly on the left. They're like, nah, fuck it. We're a Chinese 10-cent company. We don't give a shit about any Occidental branding guidelines. Anyways, so today would normally be a day that we play the Incarnation Witch Vault, and I would love nothing more than do that when it's time. But I actually brought some material as well to just keep being Professor 5, the leading professor of DeFi. And the first thing that I actually want to talk about is profit and loss and opportunity cost, because that was something we were talking about in the chat, I think, around an hour ago. And I think that a lot of people, in fact, I know a lot of people misunderstand what these words mean, because the way that profit is understood in the world of finance is actually different in the way the word profit is understood in economics. So first of all, I want to get that out of the way. Yeah. So effectively, like, you know, the econ version of profit is different than finances. And effectively speaking, to truly correct the Austrian school version of profit, it's basically written like this. I'm going to explain it in this actual sentence. Whenever two parties engage in a voluntary exchange, they both receive a profit. And I'm going to explain this to you because profit, until it becomes something that you can absolutely measure, like, and as far as like investment profit goes, profit is everywhere. There's a meme that is, I guess, a critique of capitalism that says, why would fungi grow if it doesn't have any profit motive? It says something like this. And the fact of the matter is, on an economic level, everything has a profit motive. Like the reason that a bear hibernates is profit motive. The reason that a bear goes to fish salmon out of the river is also profit motive. Like the bear stands to gain something from this behavior. Like if you stand to gain from the behavior, you could argue it's a profit motive. Certain profits can be everything from like fulfilling your need for novelty, fulfilling your need for experimentation, fulfilling your need to learn, fulfilling your need to challenge yourself. These are all profits. They might not necessarily make you financially better off, but they are in fact something that you feel benefited you. For instance, I'm going to assume that my audience is a DeFi audience. Would you guys agree that you guys are mostly Web3 user base? So naturally, 85% of you are male at the least, right? Right? Now, let me ask you, sponsored by Lehman Brothers, hilarious. Okay, so Winter Horse being excluded, how many of you guys buy cosmetics? Who here buys foundation and mascara and lip liner and lip gloss and mascara? Yeah, who here buys that? Javery, do you buy foundation? Do you buy mascara? Maddie, do you buy lip gloss? When's the last time you bought lip gloss? Nope. Okay. Electronic, do you buy yeah, never. Okay. So the fact of the matter is, do we think that the billions of people who in fact buy cosmetic products are not receiving profit when they buy them? I mean, demographically speaking, we're talking about women, right? Right? Women buy cosmetic products, right? And the fact of the matter is they use them. So like, it's not just that you get cosmetic products, but like you go through them. They're a consumable item. I don't know if you guys know this, but some cosmetic products cost such ridiculous amounts of money, like your head would boggle. You'd be like, I have no idea why this costs $400. And it's like, I don't know, it's like a tube of something. It's like a fucking stick of something. It's like a little brush of something. And they will just charge, what the average person in the Philippines makes in a month for this piece of, yeah. There you go, Seabiscuit, yeah. I mean, that's an example. So the fact of the matter is, why do billions of people buy cosmetics? Like, what could possibly be the reason? Yeah, appearance gains. There you go, Maddie. Yeah, marketing, indeed. What a great way to describe it. Marketing, appearance gains. For TikTok, maybe you're a clown in a circus and you need to paint your face up, right? There is something to gain. It feels good to look good. Indeed. It feels good to look good. Yes, the confidence gains. The, I don't know, the competitiveness gains. I actually, literally, they just do. It makes them less self-conscious. It makes them feel like does it work? Seabiscuit, again, that just the fact that, maybe you don't see the point doesn't mean that they are not receiving a profit when they swap their currency for foundation, for mascara, for eyeliner or lip liner or lip gloss or rouge. I don't fucking know if that's one they still use, but you get what I'm saying. For their eyebrows getting done, right? Oh yeah, hair coloring. Yeah, that's a big one these days. There you go. Like, so Winter Horse can literally say that she makes more money when she looks better. Now, I have no idea what she does for a living. Maybe she works in sales, or maybe she feels more confident when she's doing what she does. I have no fucking idea. But the fact of the matter is, Winter, I'll say this. I think about that all of civilization is sort of like hinges on a certain degree of people being superficially literate, meaning that a whole bunch of things rely on people not analyzing anything beneath the surface. Does that make sense? So if you were here yesterday, do you guys remember us talking about a piece of legislation called the Inflation Reduction Act? Do you guys remember us talking about the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022? Okay, so do you guys remember how the nonpartisan organization said it would have a negligible effect on inflation, and it was arguably just a package of green subsidies? Do you guys remember that? So the fact of analyzing after that point, they're like, you know what? It says Inflation Reduction Act, no further questions, high five, we're moving this shit along. Does that make sense to you guys? It's the same way. So women, with their investment in cosmetics, they get some sort of return from it. They're getting some sort of return. Whether they see that they actually make more money at their job, maybe they just feel better sitting around the house doing nothing. Who knows? Yeah. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Javery, I'm not going to comment on that, but I appreciate. Yeah. So again, economically speaking, you guys remember me talking about the 3 types of transactions? Do you guys remember them? 3 types of transactions. Do you guys remember? 2 of them begin with T. The third one begins with an E. Okay. Trade, theft, and externalities. Okay? So in theory, whenever 2 parties engage in a voluntary exchange, meaning they accept the other's terms, they both receive a profit. So I once bought a pickup truck, and I bought it, it was like 20 years old when I bought it, and I paid $1,400 for it, and I bought it from a teenager. And within like 2 weeks, this pickup truck, like the transmission just like fell out. Like it literally, I was stuck in 4th gear, and like I plowed through this fence. Thankfully the fence was fixable. Thankfully it was the fence that on this property that I was managing at the time, so you know, no big deal. But literally I was stuck in 4th gear, and it was like a farm truck, if that makes sense, and it was a farm fence. So thankfully we were able to fix the fence because we had extra fence equipment. But yeah, $1,400, and like the truck like fell out. I ended up spending $6,000 more just to get this truck operational. Does that make sense? $6,000 more. So like a variety of upgrades. I can't even remember everything I did. Then later on, I probably had that truck for maybe 2 years. I sold that truck with all its upgrades for about $3,500. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, this was literally just like a tool truck. It was a truck to serve a purpose at the time on a farm in Oregon. I later drove that truck from Oregon to South Carolina, and it did really well because, again, I invested so much money into it. But the fact of the matter is, when I bought that truck the first time, I was in profit. I had a working vehicle for $1,400. Like later on, the transmission fell out. Maybe the person who sold it to me had 0 problems with the transmission, and it was the fact that I was really learning how to drive a stick for the first time that I'm the reason the fucking transmission fell out. Does that make sense? Yeah. Oh, good morning, Tommy. We must be getting an audience on Twitter. I see we have our Twitter fan base showing up in Discord. And we're going to get it to the point where I can read chat from everywhere. But yeah. Anyways, so trade, whenever trade is happening, if everybody is agreeing to the terms, they are all in profit at that exact moment. Does that make sense? As soon as the trade is conducted, I was in profit because I wanted a truck more than I wanted $1,400. And the guy I was buying it from, he wanted $1,400 more than he wanted the truck. Believe it or not, when I bought the truck, it had off-road tires, and the tires were $1,000. Does that make sense? Like they had like maybe 1,000 miles on them. So like the truck that I fucking the truck that had a blown transmission, even for $1,400, like I was getting a great deal because the tires themselves were $1,000 and they'd been there maybe like 2 months. Does that make sense? They were arguably more expensive. So, yeah, basically that, Maddie. Yeah, but then of course I had to now invest in a transmission, a new transmission. Well, actually, I got pre-owned transmission, but that's a story for another time. Literally, when I chose to sell the truck for $3,500, I also accepted those terms. Yeah, and believe it or not, the guy who bought the truck from me, he did not negotiate it at all, because when I sold the truck, it was in South Carolina. It was hard to find that type of truck. This guy wanted to use the truck for hunting. Does that make sense? It wasn't going to be his daily driver or anything. I hadn't driven the truck myself in months when I sold it. In fact, there was a wasp's nest inside the gas can thing. The door. You open the door up, there was like wasps building a nest. They were actually nesting inside the little gas thing. Yeah. So yeah, not the gas cap itself, but the gas cap entryway. And yeah, so there was a wasp nest there. It's like, oh shit. And yeah, anyways, but he was zero problems. Did not negotiate. He gave me literally cash on the spot because he was like, I need this truck for hunting, and like I don't give a shit about any of these fucking problems, right? I was selling it for more than asking. Why was I selling it for more than, I guess what you could say was the average price these trucks went for? Because I had spent $6,000 on it, right? So like I was still, in theory, taking a loss for selling it. But at the same time, I had driven it all over fucking Oregon, up and down mountains, and then I also drove it across the country. And it was like a 20-year-old Ford Ranger XLT, right? Don't even get me started. But yeah. So like again, I have a loss financially, Javery, but at the same time, at every single point that I was making this transaction, I was technically in profit. I wasn't thinking about the vehicle like it was an investment vehicle. Does that make sense to everybody? Like literally, I sold the truck. I still regret selling it because it would just be great to have this fucking beater truck to do truck things with. And it was a lot of fun to drive too because it was a fucking stick shift. And yeah, like I got use out of it. Yeah, Javery, I was the user. You know what I mean? I wasn't buying this truck to flip it. Does that make sense? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I got use out of it. This truck helped me move things all over the place. Like it was also a 4-wheel drive, so I could drive this truck. I could drive this truck throughout Southern Oregon to very, very secluded spots. Let's put it this way: hard to access spots. And in the business I was in at the time, there was a lot of cool shit you could find in what used to be cowboy land, or should I say gold rush land. Yeah, Trigger Happy. Don't worry, we'll get there. Trigger Happy says, Pyre truck. We need a Pyre truck, yeah. It is a fun story, JB. And again, like, I owned the truck for, I think, 2 years. You know what I mean? It was already 20 years old when I bought it. Like, I went through all of these things with the truck. Does that make sense? And then, like, oh, I sold it at a loss. Like, well, did I get money when I wanted money? I did. Yeah, and did I get a truck when I wanted a truck? I did. So, like, I didn't lose either times. If you look at, like, what I bought it for versus what I sold it for, I sold it at a loss. But I want you guys to know, most vehicles, like most automobiles, are sold at a loss. It's probably because they get used by the person who owns them. Does that make sense? Do you guys get it? Like, not all of the profit of the truck is in the actual return. Yeah, depreciation. Yeah, of course. And they get used. Yeah. So it's not just the fact that they get old, they also get used while they're getting old. Right? So that is what profit is. Okay? Like literally, like when you make the transaction there, do you agree to what you're getting? Do you agree to what you're getting? Like, whether or not you have perfect information or imperfect information is not related. Like, you might have things called buyer's remorse. You could say there's also seller's remorse, but remorse does not make a profit into a loss. Does that make sense? You might feel a certain way because you now have new information, but like, you having information in the future doesn't change the amount of information you had in the past. So I want you guys to know, I first knew about Bitcoin in 2012. Okay? 2012 was the first year I can say I learned about Bitcoin. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So me knowing what I know now about what the price of Bitcoin is today, I could have, by the way, Jabri, oh, I couldn't even tell you. I think I started dealing with it officially in 2014, 2015. And that's another story for another time. But I could have, do you know what else I bought in 2012? I bought a duplex for 50 grand, right? So I had 50 grand in 2012, and I was making investments with it. Yeah, Coney 2012, Joseph Coney. We're gonna get this guy. But yeah, ancient history. But again, I literally had 50 grand, or I think I had 43, and I had a partner with 7 or something like that. But I had 43 grand in capital. I was a sprightly young man. I want to say I was like 24 at the time, 24 or 25ish at this age, maybe 23, something like that, between 23 and 25. And yeah, I bought a duplex with it. Like I bought real estate with it. This duplex was in rough shape, of course, but you get what I'm saying. I could have bought Bitcoin with it, but honestly, Bitcoin was like 2 years old at this time, right? Maybe 2009, you could say that it was 3 years old, and there was nothing there that would kind of impulse that somebody would take 43 grand and shot put it at fucking Bitcoin. Does that make sense? Because the amount of information I had at the time was not something that would make me feel like that was the right move. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Because I also wanted something that was going to make money for me, not just something that I would buy and sell later. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Javery. So I first learned about Bitcoin. There was in fact me knowing what I know now about Bitcoin, that doesn't mean, okay, had I spent 50 grand on Bitcoin in 2012, right? Let's look up the price of Bitcoin in 2012. Do you guys want to do that? What was the price of Bitcoin in 2012? Okay, AI is really shitting the bed here. Let's look at this. Okay, in 2012, it appeared to be somewhere between $26 and, sorry, there we go. Sorry, let's say that it was 120, sorry, began at 1328, 128, okay, so let's say it was $100. Let's say it was $100. That would have been what? 500 Bitcoin? So I could have gotten 500 Bitcoin for 50 grand in 2012. You guys follow this? Okay, what would be 500 Bitcoin today? What are we at? Let me just look at coin market cap. We're looking at $58,000. Yeah. So, okay. So literally 2.5 million. I think it's a lot more than that. Yeah. 3 million? I think it's more than that. I think C got it right. Yeah. 500 times 50,000? Yeah, because like 50,000, 58,000 times 500. Yeah, that's 29 million. Yeah, there you go. Yep. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Apparently $10. You could have bought it as low as $10. So, yeah, you know what? If I bought it as low as $10, it would be 290 million. Right? You guys get what I'm saying? Yeah, Jabri, exactly. Yeah, like again, what we're describing here is a perfect scenario where hindsight is 2020 and I had perfect knowledge of everything that was going to happen. Like it's literally a fantasy. Like it's just so ridiculously and cartoonish that like it's not even worth analyzing for. The whole thing is just like a thought experiment. I need you guys to understand that the prevalence of this type of thinking in Web3 is everywhere, and it literally preys on people's stupidity. Do you guys remember in 2023, there was a meme coin called Pepe? I think it blew up around April and May. Do you guys remember Pepe blowing up around May 2023? Okay. So do you guys know how much liquidity Pepe was deployed with the first time? Yeah, in spring, it was like April, yeah, I think like end of March, and then like it came, you know, April, May and stuff, and then in May everybody was talking about it forever. Right? So Pepe was deployed, and by the way, I'm bringing this up because we just talked about price impact, didn't we? Does that make sense? So Pepe's original liquidity was deployed against $4,000 in LP. Can you guys all see this on the screen? Is this visible? Fantastic. Okay. Sure as shit. Pepe blows up to like $1 billion market cap or something like that. And then do you know what people on Twitter are posting? This is the shit they're posting. This marker fucking is about to fail. Had you bought $1,000 of Pepe 30 days ago, you would have $50 million today. This is literally stuff that I saw like 50 accounts saying on fucking Twitter. Yeah, but Seabiscuit, look at what else is on the board. They're talking about day one of Pepe. Yeah, Javery, exactly. Javery, literally, if there was $4,000 of liquidity, there are people right now complaining about Pyre Phantom's liquidity, right? And we still have like 20, 30 grand or fucking 60 grand of it or some shit, right? And literally, Pepe was deployed in $4,000 of liquidity. Does that make sense? So who the fuck was gonna make that decision with like, hey, you know what? 4 grand in liquidity, I'm gonna take $1,000, I'm gonna brick it at Pepe, and I'm gonna cause a price impact of like sucking 85%. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like nobody's making that decision. Exactly. So the fact of the matter is, these people on Twitter are predating. When I say predating, they are literally, they're like manipulators. I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah, engagement farming, and they're forming a certain emotion, this sort of remorse, this hindsight greed. Does that make sense? The saliva around FOMO. Yeah, that too. Exactly. Yeah, the saliva around FOMO. But again, nobody was gonna do this because this was a stupid decision. Does that make sense? I want you guys to understand, stupid decisions don't make you rich. Like, you might win the lottery, but you'll probably lose all that money. Because in order to really kind of like continue being rich, you gotta get not stupid and making decisions. Does that make sense? Like, you have to get consistently good at making decisions. Otherwise, you'll just lose it all. Maddie, exactly. Yeah, well, hang on. Do I get it right that people just buy Pepe and nobody expand? Literally, Maddie, so transaction volume on Pepe is what deepened liquidity. Does that make sense? Javery, you're correct, but you know you are apparently. I want you to understand that that's you understand something that 99% of people in Web3 just don't. But does that make sense to you guys? Like nobody was gonna put $1,000 against Pepe when there was 4 grand in liquidity. Like literally, most dexes will stop you. Did you guys know that? They're like, hey, price impact too high, stop. Like literally, if you want to bypass it, you gotta fucking go through the block explorer or some shit. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like nobody was gonna do that. Literally look at Pyre Gas right now. You guys might know that Pyre Gas is likely to 100x from these prices when we finally taper emissions down. Even now, you knowing this, it still feels like, even if you have $1,000, yeah, even if you have $1,000, you're like, well, there's something that just isn't convincing you, right? Oh well, yeah, turn $1,000 into 100 grand. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll taper emissions down and then I'll just throw bricks at the fucking price chart. Damn it. Perception, was it the... Okay, we have a troubleshooting thing. Oh, I just fucking missed the thing, didn't I? I missed it. Okay. Yeah, I also missed it. I'm not thrilled about that. I get excited about teaching. And anyways, yeah, there was $4 grand in liquidity. Had you spent $1,000 on Pepe 30 days ago, you would have 50 million today. No, because that's literally like you... That is... Okay, that's conflating beta with alpha. Do you guys understand beta with alpha? Beta is the instrument's performance. Alpha is your portfolio performance. They are not the same thing. Yeah, they might have a large correlation, but they are not the same thing. Just to be clear. So we can also talk about like what loss is and what cost is. Does that make sense? So remember in our original example, we're talking about cosmetics that sometimes cost hundreds of dollars. Well, the person buying the cosmetics, the money they're losing is not money they're losing. That's just like the price of what they're asking for. And the fact of the matter is, when you break up this transaction, just because something nets the same way doesn't mean it's the same way in the composition. In English, there's an axiom that says there's more than one way to skin a cat. Do you guys know this maxim, this idiom? And this is the exact same concept of deriving. If let's say you're buying, $1 for 100 Pyre Phantom or something like this, and literally it gets 100. But if you increase this price to $10, and this is now, it's not 100, but rather it's only 800 Pyre Phantom, and now $100 is not 8,000, but it's actually like 5,000 Pyre Phantom, right? And why do you have this? Why do you guys have this these diminishing returns, as it were? Well, what you're looking at here is the cost. Does that make sense? Like the swap menu is effectively the cost that's being quoted by the liquidity providers. The smart contract of the LP token is explaining to you, based on the liquidity, this is what I can release for at the cost. Because the LPer is in a longer time preference position, and they need to maintain liquidity for this token. So they need to make sure that your transaction doesn't put them out of business. Does that make sense? Because all they have to offer is liquidity between both compared to how they buy it in bulk. Does that make sense? So if you buy, let's say you're buying shampoo for your hair and you spend, I don't know, like $10 for it. Let's say it's that. If the store that you're buying it from got it for $4, you're not losing $6 when you buy that shampoo. Does that make sense? Like that is in fact that is the cost. The $10 you're paying is the cost for you to get it. Because the way that they got it was not the way that you're getting it. You're getting it given to you on a shelf that you can get to locally in your own community, right? They probably had to get it shipped there on a truck where a forklift was taking it down. Does that make sense? They have to buy more. They have to have a shelving concern. They have the logistics of running their own business as well as the light bill they need to pay to get people to come into the store and not be upset. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like you don't have to pay the light bill when you go into the store to buy shampoo. But the fact of the matter is, that's what they're doing with their profit margin. Does that make sense? So the reason that liquidity providers, you might be saying, why wouldn't they give bulk discounts? It's because you're not their only customer. Other people might have Pyre Phantom and they're trying to get dollars back. Does that make sense? Like, what about the person that's trading the opposite direction? They have to serve both of these customers. So therefore, they have to defend their own interests while also serving the two customers that are going either X to Y or Y to X. Does that make sense? And it's literally, they serve both customers. They serve both customers when they're always taking that into consideration. And that's the way that LP works. But again, this is not a loss to you. This is just the cost. Yeah. If you can say, wait a minute, I'll get more tokens if I break it up into transactions. That's correct, because you're not doing the same thing. Yeah. This is the opportunity. The way that you want to do it, that costs more gas. Does that make sense? So if you're swapping this on Phantom, 10 transactions cost 10 times as much gas as one transaction. Correct? Correct? Obviously. So therefore, you're still paying a gas cost, a higher gas cost. Now you might say, oh, but the gas cost is lower than I would pay in the diminishing amount of tokens. That's great. That is still not a loss. That is still just different versions of cost. Does that make sense? When you guys pay gas, do you also bundle into the cost? It's not a loss, it's the fucking cost. Having it in that form is the product. Having it in a different form is a different product. 100 Pyre Phantom is not the same product as 5,000 Pyre Phantom. It's not the same position, it's not the same product. You're in a completely different situation. Yeah. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Yeah, it might be like a scaled version of that, but that's not fungible. Yeah. Like the token itself, 1-to-1 is fungible, but like the investors behind them and the positions that they're kind of configured in, they're not fungible with each other. Because like again, 5,000 Pyre Phantom is not 800 Pyre Phantom. Right? So somebody watching me right now, you might have 5,000 Pyre Phantom, somebody else has 800 Pyre Phantom. Would you guys trade 5,000 for 800? Oh, suddenly you see the difference. Yeah. Suddenly you understand that that's not the same thing you're getting. Yeah, you're like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. Why? Right, exactly. Like, okay, then. Okay, so. If you're buying something to sell it later, then you can describe like the total amount of money you're taking home as your profit. But that is really your net profit. That is your net profit. Because what you're describing is multiple transactions and events. Also, the time cost between those two entries and exits. Right? There's also a time value of money between your entry and your exit. Does that make sense? So like, if you buy Pyre Phantom at 1 penny and sell at 2 pennies, you have a net profit if that was your whole goal of getting dollars back, right? You have a net profit of 100%, you doubled your money. But the fact of the matter is, what if in the meanwhile you played the IWV and compounded more of them? Does that make sense? So you now have multiple components to what your net profit are here. Then how long does it take to go from 0.1 to 0.2 pennies? Does it happen in a single day? Does it happen in a week? What is the price of that week? What is the cost of that week? These are all things that matter to your quote unquote net profit. And this is like what profit is financially. They're referring to like a net profit from the starting point to the ending point. When you're returning to the almighty dollar, then you can look at like what your total input was and your total output was, and you subtract them, and you have like your net profit. But the fact of the matter is, things like money, things like time, you can't get that back. So the speed at which this return happens is also part of the total the profit. There's something called a time value of money. It's sort of what makes money work. People wouldn't accept money at all if there was no time value to it. Do you guys understand? You cannot separate money from time value. What does this mean? What the fuck am I saying here? How many people here have worked at a job before where you went to like a workplace and you had an employer and you clocked in? Who here has ever had that happen? And then they basically give you currency in exchange for your labor or your services or your results. Has anyone ever had that happen to them? Has anyone ever been in one of those scenarios? Selling your time, indeed, Maddie. Doing it right now, Javery. Okay. And well, Maddie, that's one thing. That's one aspect. Yes, exactly, Javery. Yeah. The meme coin attractiveness, because it seems like, oh, maybe I could get a fucking 40x in 2 days. Yeah. Or not. Yeah. Sadly, yes. So you guys understand this. Now, I have a question. Why did you guys offer your effort and your labor in exchange for like banknotes? Like, why did you guys accept like a number going up in a bank account associated with your name? Like, why did you guys? Yeah, bills, duty to my country. Hell yeah. Hang on a second. I have to get another water. I'm gonna step off camera real quick. Okay, I triumphantly returned to the camera. Thank you guys so much. We had no choice when our parents signed our birth certificate. Well, Winner, I want you to know whether or not your birth certificate got signed is almost immaterial. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, like whether or not you even have a birth certificate. It's like, well, yeah, you will. Yeah, there's just part of this is par for the course. Like you will toil for something. But why did you accept? Like literally, you could have a job right now, right? And you could go accept in the United States. You could go accept dollars for it. But you could also accept something else. If you negotiate it for something else. Does that make sense? Like businesses between each other, they'll do barter all the time. Does that make sense? Like I used to work at a furniture store when I was much younger, and the owner would trade furniture to get her dentist paid for. Yeah, like they're literally like the dentist is doing dental work to get like a new sofa, and the furniture owner is getting their teeth done in exchange for a sofa. This is a true story. But let's talk about money, right? Let's talk about money. So now somebody said bills, right? Somebody said you needed the money to pay for bills, right? Now when you have those bills though, like those bills are normally monthly bills, right? Are the bills we're talking about monthly bills? Yeah, okay. But you probably weren't getting a paycheck monthly, at least at your earliest jobs. You were probably getting them bi-weekly or weekly, correct? Something like this? Yeah, bi-weekly, right? I had to buy some bi-weekly jobs. I had some weekly jobs. I had monthly jobs. When I was in the military, it was a monthly for me. And, but like, what do you do? Yeah, but Jeffrey, what are you doing with that? Like that money? Like, why do you hold the money bi-weekly if your bills are monthly? Right? And it's because when you accept dollars for your job, or you accept euros, or you accept the Great British Pound, or yen, or whatever the fuck you use, you're aware that it can be used later. That's it. That is the fact that money cannot be separated from its time value, because you are storing value, which it then remains there over time, so you can convert that value later into something else. Do you guys understand? So when you accept dollars for anything, for like a bi-weekly paycheck, if you work at like a restaurant, and your bills are monthly, let's say all of your bills are in the first week of the month, but you're still getting those checks from your job twice a month. You're gonna keep that money, you're gonna hold that money, because you know you can use it to pay your bills on the first of the month. Well, Jeffrey, yes, that is an aspect of money as well, but that's more like that's a more advanced topic. But do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, even with the inflation, there is still a degree of time value to it. Does that make sense, Jeffrey? And that has to do with the speed. That has to do with the speed at which inflation happens, right? The rate of inflation. So, you know, inflation matters, and then, of course, the rate of inflation matters. Speaking of which, when we talk about having the highest real yield in DeFi, talking about PYRESWAP here again, there's yield, which is, again, a two-factor equation. It has a numerator and a denominator, but there's also yield rate, which is again what yield over time. Does that make sense? So when we talk about us having the highest real yield in DeFi, it's not just the fact that we can see why so cynical make, I don't know, 3% as of what, yesterday, 3% on Monday in a single epoch, right? But it's the fact that, you know, you have your fucking you have your like dividend. This marker is not going to make it. Yeah, this is okay. Right, you've got your like output against your input, right? So this was like 3%. But then you have the other aspect of it's actually 3% over 5 fucking minutes or less than 5 minutes. So like it's not really an epoch's worth of labor, is it? Right? It's the fact that you can make 3% in less than 5 minutes. This is also why we have the highest real yield in DeFi. Does that make sense? Because our yield rate is also the highest. Thank you for understanding this. Yeah, like this is not like something we're just saying. Yeah. This is your yield, your 3% yield, your output against your input, right? Your 3%. But if you're making 3% in less than 5 minutes, that is also a very high yield rate. And the thing is, you can't separate money from its time value, which is what I just said. Do you guys remember that fact? We deliberately, took less as a coffee break. Yeah. Literally, the reason we have the highest real yield, by the way, is because it's set by the market, which is you guys, which is the players. It's not in the code. The code does not create the highest real yield in DeFi. It's the idea in the market's brains, the shared idea of how the game plays out. That therefore, there's always a certain amount of appetite, there's a certain amount of want for it, and a certain amount of risk mitigation. Let's put it that way. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Yeah, that is also a, what is that, maybe 1.5, 2%? Yeah, okay. That this yield is low. I'm looking at there. What is, let me. That's 3.4 out of 224. Yeah, get out of here. Yeah, okay. That's 1.5%. Yeah. Damn, while playing with 224 of them too. Very nice. So we have the highest real yield and the highest real yield rate because you're getting it. You're getting it either as slow as 6 hours or you're getting it as fast as less than 5 minutes. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? It's either as slow as 6 hours or as fast. But either one of these rates, either one of these numbers in the denominator is still the highest real yield and the highest real yield rate in DeFi. Do you guys understand me? Yeah, bring 2 shares back to 1,000. Yeah, let's bring it to 10,000. Bring PYRESWAP back to 500. Yeah, we'll bring it to fucking peg. You know, anyways, I'm not mad about us hitting this all-time low because without it, we wouldn't be able to say we're a 100x project, could we? Right? There's a silver lining to these red candles, which, by the way, can't kill this project. We talked about profit and loss. Again, whenever you're measuring something financially, what you don't measure it on is how you fucking feel about it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Like, we do not measure things about how we feel about them. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, your emotional state is not a metric because you feel differently about the same thing in different contexts. If you have a job right now, you feel differently about going to that job on Monday than you do on Friday. Yeah, like you feel differently about eating a meal for the 3rd day in a row versus eating it for the first time in a month. Do you guys get what I'm saying? It could be the same exact meal. Does everyone understand? So like the way that you feel about it is not objective because the way that you feel is variable. The way that you feel about basic things, the same things. Certain days you might appreciate everyone in your family and then other days you take them for granted. But they're the same people in your family, are they not? Yeah. So like obviously the way that you feel is flawed. Therefore don't use it for your metric. Yeah. The way that you feel in hindsight does not turn what was the time of profit into a loss either. It does not turn cost into a loss. Like these are actual mathematical things that can be defined. Yeah. Like learning that my car was gonna need a new transmission, my truck, did not turn my profit into a loss. Yeah. The fact of the matter is I now needed a new transmission and the price that I eventually got for it was what I was willing to pay for it. And that's what happened. Okay, now there's opportunity cost as well. So like the fact of the matter is, there's something called opportunity cost, which we'll talk about now. So do you guys remember Fi's ice cream trucks? Okay. So opportunity cost is important because it actually is deliberately how financial instruments are derived. So if we have truck A, right, which is chocolate, and then we have truck B, which is vanilla, and then we have truck C, which is chocolate, vanilla. What is the cost of going to truck A or truck B? And what's the cost of, in fact, choosing chocolate or vanilla at truck C? If you're going to go get chocolate ice cream, there's another cost besides the price you pay for it. And that cost is you also can't get vanilla ice cream. You're only going to one of these trucks. Does that make sense? You can't be at all three trucks at the same time. Does that make sense? This is another cost to your chocolate ice cream or your vanilla ice cream or your chocolate or vanilla ice cream. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Opportunity cost. Yeah, opportunity cost. Yeah, Javery, you can marry one woman, but you can't marry all the women. Yeah, so when you marry a woman, the opportunity cost is you didn't marry all the other ones. Does that make sense? I'm not going to comment on that, but yeah, it is what it is. Like again, you can live in a house, but you can't live in every house. Does that make sense? When you have enough capital to buy a house, right? Let's say you have, what does a house go for these days? Like $7 million? Let's say you have $7 million and you're just going to buy a single family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in the United States. And if you have the money to buy that house, you can only spend it to buy that one house. You can't buy all the other houses you could buy with that $7 million. Does that make sense? Because you can only spend that money once. In other timelines, maybe you bought those other houses, but that didn't happen to you in this timeline. Does that make sense to you guys? This is another economics thing. It's called opportunity cost. If you want to go to one college to get a degree, you can't go to the other college to get the same degree. Because you're only going to have that period in your life once. And you're only going to be able to pay tuition once. Are you guys following me here? All right. So, opportunity cost is not a loss. It is a cost. Does that make sense? It's a hidden cost, and it's really an intangible cost. Just because you learn about something after the fact doesn't mean that it's a loss for you. Maybe you have a negative feeling about it, but that does not make it a loss. Does that make sense? Yeah, like, oh man, I paid $1,400 for a truck, but now I got to spend $3,000 to get a fucking transmission for it. Like, is that a loss? No, really the fact of the matter is I spent $1,400 for a truck. The fact that I need a new transmission should not have blown me the fuck away. Does that make sense? Because if I wanted a truck with a working transmission, maybe I should have just bought another truck for $4,000 in the first place. Does that make sense? Do you guys get it? Like I was trying to get the least entry for this truck that I needed to use as a tool, and therefore the fact that its transmission fell out was not really something that should have blown me out of the fucking water. What? I paid $1,400 for a 20-year-old truck and it's a transmission problem? It does not make it a loss. It's an inconvenience, it's a cost, but it's not a loss. Never in your life, by the way, have you made the ideal transaction. You might have been satisfied with what happened, but it was still not ideal, right? Because for something to be ideal would require that it's really an infinite return, right? Right? Unless you were able to trade nothing for infinite dollars, you have never made an ideal transaction. So the fact that you can recognize now that other transactions you're making are not ideal does not mean that these are lost transactions. Do you guys know the word impermanent loss? Who here has heard this word? Love impermanent loss. Indeed, my favorite topic. So in big boy finance, I'll just write this out. We could call this cross lambda coefficient. And why would we call it cross lambda coefficient? We would call it cross lambda coefficient because it's not a fucking loss. Does that make sense to you guys? Basically speaking, impermanent loss, for whatever fucking reason, is measured like this. Buy and hold token A and B illiquid, or buy and deploy A and B as liquidity. I want you guys to understand something. If you're faced with a choice where you can buy and hold token A and B illiquid, or you can buy and deploy A and B as liquidity, this is not a loss. This is in fact opportunity cost. Because I want you guys to understand something. Whether you buy and hold token A and B illiquid, or you buy and deploy A and B as liquidity, your choice of making these two things affects the outcome. So when they look at this like scenario where token A doubles in price, so therefore, had you held the illiquid, you would have made this much money. Had you held them as illiquid, you would have not made that much money, or something like this. This is in fact comparing apples to oranges, and in fact comparing two completely different scenarios. Because if you're buying and deploying A and B as liquidity, you are in fact contributing to its price action. Do you guys understand? Well, Maddie, it's not only that. The total amount of liquidity in the fucking pair is going to determine how much the other traders are going to affect its price. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? And then on top of that, if everybody is buying and holding token A and B illiquid, that also means that when you're going to fucking sell this token for profit, you're now going to receive higher price impact in scenario A. But they don't talk about that as something that diminishes, or should I say, they don't think of that as like something that diminishes your profit. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Because it's not a loss, and it's also not a profit. These are two different vehicles. These are two different positions. Other things that impermanent loss calculators don't look at is how much time it took for token A to change price. It doesn't talk as much about the volume in the pair as liquidity, which is giving you swap fees that give you more of token A and token B. It doesn't talk about like whether or not the token goes down and then back up, or then up and then back down, and then it finally ends up at this other price. Buying and holding token A and B also does not give you swap fees, like Maddie is saying. These are two different vehicles. Does that make sense? Another great example. Okay, guys. If you buy a house and rent the whole unit monthly, or if you buy a house and Airbnb each bedroom out, which one of you guys thinks the most money over time? Or you think renting monthly does? Honestly, depending on where your location is, Maddie, it can definitely matter. But the fact of the matter is, generally speaking, if you're Airbnb each bedroom out, let's say you have 3 bedrooms, yeah, you'll probably make more money this way. But the fact of the matter is, again, there's a lot of context there. But again, if you're buying a house and renting the unit monthly, you're not losing money because you're not Airbnb-ing it. Does that make sense? Like, your choice to not Airbnb each individual bedroom is not causing you a loss. This is the same as impermanent loss. This is what they call impermanent loss. It's not a loss. Fuck, yeah, I'm gonna... They have ruined DeFi. They have fucking ruined DeFi. This shit fucking... Seabiscuit, exactly. There is more effort involved with this. Yeah, like you have to do management. You got to do cleaning. Yeah, you have customer service now. You're dealing with one person here for a year, or here you're dealing with, I don't know, 100 people in a year. Does that make sense? You're dealing with 100 people in a year here versus one person in a year here. Pyre, you could assume like a 70% occupancy. Yeah, like each bedroom will be occupied, let's say 20 days of the month, something like that, 22 days. Yeah, that's like, I did Airbnb before in the past. I have a business partner who does it like at scale. He's had like 300 listings. He was in the top 5 Airbnb super hosts in Denver many years ago. So he was making hand over fist money in Airbnb. That was like when people were first visiting Denver for whatever fucking reason. Anyways, yeah, buying the house and running it monthly, you're dealing with one person. And you buy the house and Airbnb it, you're dealing with hundreds of people, in theory, in a year. 100 people a year. Yeah, this is not a loss. Like, let's say you're making like 10% a year here. You're making, 10% a year here. And here you're making 40% a year. You are not making a 30% loss when you do this. This is opportunity cost, but it is not a loss. It blows my mind that these fucking DeFi brainlets literally, like, they discover the idea of opportunity cost and they just decide to call it impermanent loss, and nobody has really figured out that what the fuck they're talking about is actually nonsense. In big boy finance, you wouldn't call it impermanent loss either. You would call it cross-lambda coefficient. And there has been so much widespread nonsense and buffoonery spread around DeFi that I now have to be the only guy giving a fuck about correcting this shit, because if nobody does this, then there will not really be an economic or financial revolution coming out of Web3. So I now have to undo the fucking damage by being the DeFi professor to actually explain people what things are and what they aren't. Because, never mind, I'm not going to fucking talk about this. It makes my goddamn blood pressure spike. I'm kidding. But yeah, no, this is also part of like my main motivation. So in theory, it's even profitable for me to talk about this stuff, because when I can teach it to other people, I am no longer infuriated by the way people understand this. Does that make sense? So I spend time doing education because I'm going to be angry less in the future. Do you guys get what I'm saying? And that is my profit for it. Does everyone understand? Does everybody get it? Yeah. Like, if I spend the time and the effort doing the education, then in the future, like, I'm going to be less infuriated by what I see around me. Making sense? Is my audio working? I hope my audio is working. Okay, opportunity cost we talked about. It doesn't make sense? Oh, my audio is working? There we go. Hell yeah. Okay, let's see. Yeah, don't measure stuff on how you feel. Profit and loss. Okay. DeFi literacy contributor. Thank you, Pega. The amount of EPR realized is decentralized. Okay, so. not even a comma there. Okay, when EPR gets realized, that is being governed by decentralized actors. Does that make sense? I have zero control over like the EPR being realized every epoch. Do you guys understand that? Yeah, he's making fun of me. He's making fun of me by having that nickname. Bravo, Pega. Do you guys understand this? No? Okay. The EPR being realized at the end of the round, the amount of actual yield that gets captured and distributed in cans, that is being realized by decentralized actors. Whether it's why so cynical or whether it's me playing with a dollar, literally like the EPR being realized, we're all contributing to it in our own way. EPR being realized as real yield, the reason the yield is higher with active staking I guess I'm going to remove quotes from this too. Do you guys know about like what they talk about being real yield with passive staking with like liquidity? Like if you're getting swap fees on liquidity pairs, that is a also real yield, but it's passive staking. Does that make sense? Like when you stake liquidity, you're staking it passively. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, okay. So the reason real yield is higher with active staking, why is it? Why is it higher? Can you guys guess? Shorter time frame. It's actually not that. It's actually not that, but I mean, I get what you're saying there. It is actually because the user base perceives the work to be higher because it is higher. Does that make sense? The workload is higher. Literally, it requires effort. It requires calculation. It requires mental labor and risk analysis. Does that make sense? For those of you who don't understand, that right there is literally the mental labor of bankers. So Jerome Powell or Christine Lagarde or literally, Jamie Dimon, whoever you want to reference, literally like risk analysis is a job. It's like you're thinking about the risk involved. Does that make sense? And everybody's thinking about it at the same time, and everybody's understanding that everybody else doing that work is making the workload higher there. So believe it or not, it weeds out the lazy intoxicated. You're not wrong there, Seabiscuit. If you understand that the risk analysis is actual labor and effort, then you understand why is real yield higher with active staking? Because active staking creates proof of work. Does that make sense? There is more value in active staking because the work is understood by everybody. This is the same way that Bitcoin ends up getting value by human actors because they realize the work it took to acquire that. Does that make sense? There was an effort cost. Whether that's being done by a computer or whether that's being done by a human is not really relevant. Yes. That's also, we talked about yield rate earlier as well. Yeah. Yeah, but also, that being considered, for the amount of seconds, within a few seconds, it's also like, it's not the fact that it's 2% in an epoch, it's getting 2% in a minute, right? So like literally the yield rate, if you want to think about it being just the ultimate minute as it were, like the reason it's higher is because like, okay, this takes a little bit of effort on my part. This takes tactics, this takes strategy, this takes thinking. Does that make sense? Everybody playing, that's 10 people thinking, that's 10 people assessing, that's 10 people guessing. So the amount of yield, like I know you think that, oh, the more people playing, it gets compressed more. But the fact of the matter is, the more people playing, the more effort is getting placed into that yield. So I want you to understand, like, don't expect the yields to continue to get compressed to 0 if we increase the player base to 50. Because the amount of labor getting put into the game will also, well, you'll see. Well, you'll see. Yeah, we have done 0 programming to fucking create the realized EPR being 1% or 2% or 3%. Or I think we've seen 20% in a single epoch back in the day. Like, that's not in the code. There's nothing in the code that makes this the highest real yield instrument. Does that make sense? The game theory makes it the highest real yield. And when I mean proof of work there, I don't mean validation, validation of blocks on a blockchain. But again, that is also why why Bitcoin has value, because you're proving it to human actors, and they can see, oh, well, they had to mine this amount of blocks in order to acquire that amount of Bitcoin, right? Okay, you keep your secrets, 5? Yeah, we have that meme, or we have that emoji. Do we not? Okay, well anyways. Did you guys not see what I was writing? Is that what Jabri was saying? Is my audio off? Is the camera dead? No, the camera works. My audio should be working both ways. Damn, we went extra long today. Okay, no big deal. But yeah, anyways, I feel that we go extra long whenever I feel like I have good stuff to talk about. I wanted to actually play the IWV today, but I guess I just went into professor mode instead. Yeah. And again, I want you guys to understand that, like, economically, profit is subjective. And then, like, financially, if you're talking about an actual, like, input and output of a vehicle, those can be measured against each other. But you have to understand that there's just more factors in the equation. You've got time value. You've got, like, the total amount of risk involved. I want you guys to understand something else, that if you ever borrow money from a bank or anybody, you know, they assess how much they need for interest based on the fact that they don't need that money right now, but the fact of the matter is giving you that money inhibits their ability to make money with that money a different way. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is that you want to learn how to specialize in a certain vehicle that fits for you. Like, that's really how, I guess, the rich people do it. Does that make sense? They don't try to think about how to make money every single which way. They think about, how do I get good at a few ways of making money that I understand and I have an edge with. Thank you, Jaber. Yeah, there's no reason to be bearish. There's no reason to be bearish, you guys. I literally jacked up the APR because I felt bad about us bricking the first Genesis. So we hyperinflated the fuck out of the token. We also hyperinflated it while we also stalled marketing. So, like, it's not really a surprise that the price tapered down very, very fastly. We also turned decay off. So again, we turned decay off. We increased the fucking emissions. And then we didn't have marketing. I don't know what you guys thought was going to happen. It's okay, though. We can now taper emissions. We can now increase marketing. And again, yeah, we spread the word. And eventually, again, Genesis can't last forever either way. Hope that makes sense. Yeah. I think, Jabri, I want you guys to know something. We're at a 3% expansion rate now, so APR did taper, and you know, if that makes you sad, I'm sorry, but it'll be okay, because eventually speaking, the price will go back up, and then the APRs will begin climbing again, even with the same expansion rate. I believe Fexer said it earlier, that you can see 0.5% of actual price gain daily because of the incantation's buy pressure. It can do even more with higher amounts of volume, higher amounts of background volume, and again, when the prices start climbing back up, people will begin deepening liquidity. As we deepen liquidity, especially with the arbitrage pairs, we end up getting more background volume as well. Does that make sense? So, like, we might go horizontal-ish for a little while when we get to 1% daily expansion rate. What's great about a 1% daily is, like Fexer said, if we have 0.5 getting bought every day, well, in a 1% daily expansion rate, you're only selling, maybe rationally speaking, about half of that anyway. So you should, in fact, at a 1% daily, eventually arrive at like a rationally flat market. Then all you gotta do is increase the user base, and yeah, the price has to go up. Does that make sense? Like once we have the same amount of inflation and deflation, once we have like an equilibrium there, the rest is it. The 5% is the gratuity. Sorry, no, the 0.5 is the buy pressure. The 0.5 is the buy pressure. The incantation buys Pyre Phantom. Yeah, so all of the background volume literally gets swapped to Pyre Phantom before it gets sent to the meat address. Yeah, those swaps put positive price impact on Pyre Phantom. Were you guys aware? Yeah. So like again, that Seabiscuit, if you remember before Genesis, like the chart would end up in an uptrend for some fucking reason. Do you remember like, oh, the chart's in an uptrend now? Yeah, that's literally happening because the incantation itself will come back to correct to an uptrend because you had decay helping as well, right? But remember, like, why did we have the velvet row pattern? Like, what is the, like, in order to cause the velvet row pattern, you need to have green candles at some point, right? There needs to be buys, right? So it's not just the buy of the incantation itself. When the token is scarce, you will eventually have other actors buying the token, front-running the incantation. Does that make sense? Pre-buying the incantation? Exactly, ZeroKex, yeah. Yeah. The transpire button withdraws liquidity and then also places a buy. Yeah. It's a small buy, but again, a small buy, it has the ability to create derivative value because the velvet rope pattern is its own aftermarket. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, I know you guys can't see the velvet rope pattern right now, but you guys know it's there. It's just suppressed through inflation. And I want you guys to know we are stylistically tapering the curve. So right now, we were at 4.5. I'll write this up. We were at 4.6. Yeah, we were at 4.625%. We have now taken it to 3%. The next two ones will probably be 1.75% and then 1%. Does that make sense? So we're at 3%. We'll probably be here for about a week. So I want to say on Sunday, we'll change it to 1.75%. Electronic, I'll tell you this. The gratuity caps at 10%. Does that make sense? Like, so you can't get it higher than 10%. Right now it's 5%. I don't really feel like we're going to fucking, I don't really feel like we need to. Does that make sense? I think what we'll have is we'll have like a yield consolidation thing happening. Does that make sense? At like 1%, and then eventually it'll scale back up. Again, electronic, the market is what sets EPR anyways. Does that make sense? But I think 5% is plenty. Again, the maximum we could ever go is 10%. I don't really feel we need to. Yeah, like I don't really feel the need for that right now. But yeah, the highest we could go is 10%. So we could increase the gratuity as high as 10%, but like I don't really care at this point. Yeah, I agree. I know what you're saying. Like literally, if we decrease expansion rate, then the total yield per epoch is going down. However, we're also trying to get marketing happening. Does that make sense? And we want more volume on the DEX from marketing. Does that make sense? Because people will actually remember electronic, when we get down to 1%, it's much harder to acquire the token. There's actual reason to begin buying the token when you get to a inflation rate and deflation rate that are at equilibrium. Does that make sense? Nobody wants to buy it now because it's so abundant. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is we have to make it scarce. Does everyone understand? Yeah. And yes, again, do you guys remember the math from yesterday about literally how much of the total supply 10 stakers in epoch can do? Again, if we get 20 stakers in epoch, if you can burn half the supply in a year with 10 stakers in epoch, then you could probably burn half the supply in 6 months with 20 stakers, right? Yeah, JV remembers. Okay. If it's 50% per year, with 10, then if we do 20, is it fucking 50% in 6 months? If you do 40, is it 50% in 3 months? If you get to 80, is it 50% in 6 weeks? It's not impossible. Yeah. 80 stakers in Epoch is not impossible. 50% of the total supply in 6 weeks. Because when I was first doing this math, I assumed that we wouldn't have 10% of the total supply, like playing for Epoch. I was assuming that more like, I think I simulated for like 5%, 3%, and 1%. Does that make sense? Right? So the fact of the matter is, because decay is not a factor, people are actually burning more through the IWV. Does that make sense? So the upside is that we turned decay off, but the IWV actually did increase its burn rate because people are now comfortable holding bigger chunks of token. So therefore, we in fact burn more through smoldering. So that is kind of an upside to decay being turned off. The IWV burn rate is higher, right? Six weeks. Is that it? Yeah. Look at this chat, right? Like, especially you guys who've been here since February. Look at all these people who weren't here in February. So, like, I know that that's been 6 months now, but, like, clearly certain marketing does work. And again, like, all we're going to do now is blow our marketing up. We're going to have the most aggressive, multifaceted marketing machine going all the time until we effectively have, why the hell not, 80 stakers in Epoch. 80 stakers in Epoch would hit 300 a day, wouldn't it? We don't even, by the way, we don't even need all 300 people a day staking. Like, people that are trading the Velvet Rope pattern also help. Because when you trade the Velvet Rope pattern, you're contributing to volume. Does that make sense? And you're contributing to speculation. And by the way, that number was 48%, but I rounded it to 50. I don't give a fuck. Or is it 52%? I don't remember which one was which. Anyways, do you guys have questions? Who here has questions? Well, Javery, yeah, again, then we're going to probably, in order to have word of mouth happen, we need to have more ways to get the awareness out. So we're just going to get aggressive with awareness. I said it before, you guys have seen the marketing chart. We don't have a problem with the bottom of the funnel. We have a problem with awareness. Why do we have an awareness problem? Because this is meme coin season and awareness is literally the entire product. Does that make sense? Like, awareness is the entire market now. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So, like, we're competing with products and all they care about is awareness. Does that make sense? So we have to take a page from their book and get aggressive as fuck about awareness. Does that make sense? It's not brain surgery even. It's just like, we need to get aggressive about awareness, multi-directions, all strategies, all the fucking time. I was trying to literally just like do the minimal amount of marketing that projects needed back in the day. And I realize now that, like, as this industry becomes more and more of a marketing industry, we'll never be able to, Jay, exactly that, 100% that, but we'll never be able to not have marketing. So, like, we'll need to have, like, marketing happening all the time, like, just in the background. So, like, that is effectively the strategy. We're not going to, I'm not spinning up, like, a month of marketing anymore, or, like, you know, we have a marketing target for, you know, August or September. I'm just going to spin up, like, a marketing and content factory that's going all the time. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, like, it'll never stop. Maybe I'll be doing less of things. That's the goal, right? But yeah, that's the fucking goal. Anyways, thank you guys so much for coming to the PYRESWAP show. I'm going to salute out. And if you guys have any questions, you can DM me. Oh, by the way, come to the AVAX Talk show on Twitter, AVAX Talk. It's in about 2 hours. It's in about 2 hours. So 2 hours, you guys, on Twitter. Come to AVAX Talk and support us with your emoji reactions. If you guys want to jump onto the stage and speak, you guys can just request to be a speaker on that show, and they'll let you come up. And you know what would be great? If I wasn't the only person talking about PYRESWAP on Twitter. So if you guys feel confident in voicing things on Twitter, by all means, it helps because it looks like it's not just one guy beating the drum. It looks like more and more people believe in the project, which helps people believe in the project. Phenomenal, you guys. I'm so bullish on your emojis. I'm so bullish. Thank you guys so much for coming to the PYRESWAP show. See you tomorrow on the early show.